Subject to is acquiring a property without having to take out a new mortgage. So you do have ownership of the property. The deed is transferred into your name, or if you have an entity or whatever, LLC or a land trust or whatever it may be. But it is keeping that loan in place, which is very attractive, especially in today's market, where we can pick up loans in the 3 and the 4% range, which you can't buy that. You can't buy that interest rate today. No matter what you do, you're not going to get that interest rate.
Welcome back to the Falls Home Front podcast, the show where we talk about real estate, wealth, and smart decision making for people who want more control over their future, not just more transactions. Today's guest is someone I've been looking forward to having on because he lives at the intersection of education, ethics, and real-world investing. I'm joined by Roger Paschal, a Texas-based realtor, real estate investor, educator, author, and mentor who specializes in creative financing. He's also a great connector of people. I think he literally knows everyone in North Texas. He is the author of the book Subject to: How to Buy Property with No Credit or Money Down, has completed hundreds of deals, and has trained investors nationwide. And here's something that I really like. Roger is also a longtime leader of Rotary International, including serving as past district governor. That tells you a lot about how he approaches business and service. Roger, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Tim. Good to see you today. Tim and I have run in the same circles for many years. We've been involved in lots of different deals. I've got lots of Tim stories. If you know me, I tell stories. Got lots of fun Tim stories, let me tell you.
Fun Tim stories.
You asked me how I got started in the real estate investing. My background was import-export. I owned a large company, had locations around the country, hundreds of employees, and I just got burned out. I just got totally burned out on it. But my wife she's a retail realtor, and I thought, I'll never want to go into real estate because you're having to find a new client every time you'd have a closing. So you're unemployed between every closing. So I thought, I'll work with investors and investment real estates. So in my subject to journey, which is what I specialize in, is subject to, as Tim mentioned on the book, back in the subprime days, we were seeing all these properties come on the market. I encountered tons of homeowners that were losing their homes. And essentially, foreclosure was about their only option. Short sale, then foreclosure, or just a short sale. But whatever, it was very painful for them to go through that process. I watched all this. I was motivated to explore alternative solutions and that could help the homeowner and avoid foreclosure and prevent damage to their credit. The experience sparked my interest in subject to investing as I learned how to offer those solutions for the people that needed it, ultimately aiming to preserve their financial stability and keep them in their home. Not necessarily keep them in the homes, but keep their credit in place, keep all that rolling.
Right. What did the first deal look like?
Oh, my first deal, that was Hazel. Hazel was a older lady. My wife went to talk to her about listing her house. And Hazel was in a wheelchair. She had severe osteoporosis. She could not hold her hand up without putting her hand under her chin, hold her hand up. And my wife talked to her and she says, I don't want a lockbox on my door. I can't leave the house. I'm going to have to be here when they show. I can't do anything to the house. And I need it sold very fast because I've got my reservations to go into the assisted living center next week.
Oh, wow.
And my wife said, that doesn't work out for listing in the MLS, but my husband's been working with investment real estate. I've already done several investments, just not subject to. So she called me up. I went over to visit with her, and we put the deal together. I gave her a little bit of money. She didn't have a lot of equity. We gave her a little bit of money for taking the pain off the moving, and we put this together. I didn't know a lot of what I was doing. I was learning on the fly. Fortunately, I had a great title company that walked me through part of this, and then I just got absorbed and started researching everything I could about subject to because it was such a great way to pick up that property. She didn't have, like I said, she didn't have a lot of equity, so I couldn't have gone to the bank and borrowed the money and then came out in a positive cash flow position. Like I said, Hazel was a super gal. We got her into the assisted living the next week, and I did very little work on the house and turned it into a rental. And had that house for many years, made the mistake of selling it. I shouldn't have sold it. And I didn't sell it owner finance, which is I do all mine today.
Yeah. That's a great story, and something that we talk about a lot. It's not just about buying houses, but it's about solving problems. And so it's really interesting that that's how you started, with solving a problem.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You talk to a lot of new investors. If there's a new investor, or if you were going to start over today, knowing what you know now, what would you do differently?
I would have, number one, when I got started, I immediately searched out anywhere, anyhow, I could get more information on creative financing, on subject to and owner finance and areas like that. I probably would have gotten a mentor sooner. I put that off, owned a business for all my life and didn't really think I needed a lot of stuff on there. So education is where it's at. I did go out and immediately start seeking out education, various trainers. But what I found is there's a lot of gurus out there, a lot of books that I've read that don't really give you the nuts and bolts on how to do the business. They talk about wonderful stories about all the wonderful things they've ever done and how great they are. And that's not what the business is about. It's not about us. It's about the clients that we're trying to help.
Right.
Essentially, I would have probably gotten a mentor sooner. I did get one and wound up with more than one, but I did get one on the subject too and learned a lot from that group of people and that gentleman. And so, like I said, education, number one, education. Make a lot of mistakes. I look back and think of all the missed opportunities I had because I didn't know to ask.
Yeah. And for those listening who may feel like they don't know where to start, there is a lot of overwhelm. Just know that every investor that you admire started with confusion and uncertainty too.
Absolutely. And education really doesn't cost as much money as some people think it does. A lot of them will go to these events and they're out there charging $70,000, $80,000, and that's not where it's at. You get great education. Tim and I both have been part of REI clubs, which is real estate investment groups. Any town, pretty much more than 100,000 people is going to have at least one group. You get in Dallas-Fort Worth, there's probably 30 investment groups that meet over there, and you want to get involved. You don't want to go once a year because nobody's going to know who you are. But yeah, it's all about education and all about learning how to work with people.
Yeah, that's true. Hey, let's talk about the phrase people hear all the time, but they really don't understand. Creative financing and subject to investing. In plain language, what does subject to actually mean?
Subject to is acquiring a property without having to take out a new mortgage. So you do have ownership of the property. The deed is transferred into your name, or if you have an entity or whatever, LLC or a land trust or whatever it may be. But it is keeping that loan in place, which is very attractive, especially in today's market, where we can pick up loans in the 3 and the 4% range, which you can't buy that. You can't buy that interest rate today. No matter what you do, you're not going to get that interest rate.
Right.
There's always going to be closing costs. Don't think I got a free property. That's not what it's about. You're taking responsibility for making that mortgage payment, for the condition of that property, and part of the education is knowing that you've got to create cash flow out of it. And every property I've ever taken, I think, I'm guessing every property you've taken, Tim, there's always those, oh, I wasn't expecting that. But you got to be prepared for that. If you have zero money out there, you better find some access to money, which money's pretty easy to find if you know how to look for it. And I'm sure Tim's probably already done a couple of episodes on that, but that's Tim's. I'm telling you, Tim is one of the most creative guys I've ever met in my life. And he is just extremely gifted on finding ways to find money. And you have to do that with subject to too. You're not bringing in a 20% down payment. You're bringing in enough money to close at the title company. Sometimes there's a lot of equity in the house and you might have to do a deal with the seller, which we do it all the time. But overall, we're out there to make the deals happen. People ask me what the average closing cost is if they're not behind on payments and you're not giving anything for the equity of that house. You're not writing a check at the close. You're looking at usually below $2,500 to acquire a house, which is just really inexpensive. Right. And that's mainly title fees, title insurance. And in most cases, when we're picking up these houses, we're paying all the closing costs. So we're paying both sides of the deal and putting that together. But that's what we're running into on that.
Okay, great. So basically the loan stays in the seller's name, but the buyer is taking over responsibility for making the payments to the property without needing a new loan.
That is correct. And you have ownership of the property.
Right.
It's not owned by somebody else. It's not The property is not staying there. And let me throw this in there.
Yeah.
You never ever let the seller stay in the house. Okay. There's a reason they're selling it. You never let them stay in the house. So you're going to make sure that's in the negotiations and the disclosures. And in this business is all about disclosures.
Right. Yeah. And so something that lots of time people don't understand is that the deed of the house, the ownership of the house, and the mortgage are not the same thing. And so the mortgage can stay in place and the ownership can transfer to the new buyer.
And when I was new in this business, I did not, that was one of my biggest stumbling blocks, is I just did not understand that the mortgage and the deed were not married or connected together, whatever you want to say. It took me a little bit. It took me a while to figure that out, and probably a good part of the day, but I didn't just understand it immediately.
Right.
But yeah, and Tim and I, we solve problems. That's what we do.
Right.
We're problem solvers. And we figure out a way, like with Hazel, here's what she needed. And as far as I know, obviously nobody else offered her any of that. Realtors come in, I can list it, but your days on the market in this neighborhood are X number of days.
Right.
Then it's going to take 30 to 45 days to close after we get a contract. She didn't want any of that. And yeah, you're just getting out, you're listening to their why. God gave us one mouth and 2 ears. We use them accordingly. So we're listening to their why, and we're understanding what needs to happen to get them where they want to be. And everybody has a different story.
Right.
Everybody's the same.
No, that's great. Yeah. Who is this strategy best suited for?
As a buyer or as a seller?
Let's talk about buyers.
Buyers?
Yeah.
It's great for new investors, but I work with people that worked with a guy last night that I actually went to his business in another state. And when I went out there, he had over 100 subject twos, but he needed to refine the way he was doing it because it was costing him a lot of money, not having the education of knowing what to do. In this particular case, it was his property insurance. He was doing double property insurance because he didn't know how to do property insurance. So he had over 100 properties. You figure at the time insurance running about $1,000 a year per house. That was $100,000 a year out of his profits.
Wow.
It's good for anybody, but it's really good for that new investor that are just getting their feet wet, that are just working to try to get something out there. They do need to have the mentality of understanding how to structure their expenses. And they have to understand it's not a free house.
Right.
Okay. People say that all the time. I got my house for free. No, you didn't. There's a mortgage attached to it. But now you're going to put a tenant in there, and that tenant's going to pay that mortgage for you. They're going to pay the property insurance. They're going to pay the property taxes. They're going to pay down the principal of that loan, and the whole time you're getting cash flow above and beyond what you're paying out every month to what they're paying you. And I don't know any other investment out there that people can do where somebody else is paying for the principal of your investment, all your expenses,
right,
and you're making money every month. You can't do that in the stock market.
Yeah. One of the big risks that we talk about is overpromising and underdelivering, making promises that we don't have control over. Lots of people teach things about wanting to say, hey, I'll buy your house or I'll do a refinance in a certain number of years, but the market could change and things. Could you talk a little bit about those risks and how we avoid those?
So, absolutely. And Tim's heard me say this before, but I've been married all my life. Okay. My wife's kept me around longer than probably she should have. But I learned early into my relationship with my wife that never make a decision when somebody else is involved in that decision-making process. And that's the same thing when you're taking over a property. So if an investor goes in there and says, you know what, I will have your name off this mortgage in 5 years or in a year or 6 months. I hear all of it. I own a company that we do consulting around the country with the people that have done subject twos and they have challenges. I deal with these people all day long. And I had one recently where he picked up a block of properties from an investor that wanted out of the business. And the investor you told me you'd have my name off the loans in 5 years. He picked them up when the average loan that he picked up is about 3% interest. And if he went to go refinance those today, he's going to be paying in the high sixes, low sevens.
Right.
It just doesn't make any sense. And I told you, and so we never promise that. A good investor will never say, I'll have your name off that loan in X amount of time. There's no, you may have it in the paperwork that you guarantee to do that or something, but you're going to have to do some major negotiations, because we never expected, we got down to the interest rates down in the 3% range. And for some reason, everybody in the United States just considered that's going to be the normal for the rest of my life. And it was not.
Right.
When I started my import-export business back in 1980, I watched interest rates go from the 7% range to the 18% range in 12 months.
Right.
And it was just a life learning lesson for me, is don't think things are here to stay, because things change every single day and every aspect of our life. So we want to make sure that everybody I work with, everybody that I do mentoring for or training to, understand you never promise anything if somebody else is in that decision-making process.
Yeah, that's great. That's very important to understand. A lot of people are making that mistake in the creative financing world. A lot of the gurus out there teach to say exactly those things. And yeah. So we run across that all the time. During the beginning, we talked about how we are looking to solve problems, not just buy houses. Where do investors actually find sellers who are looking for creative solutions?
In my book, I have about a dozen different ways that I have used or currently use on finding properties. So number one thing that I do is I look to see where can I buy, or how can I buy properties that have an interest rate in there that's going to allow me to cash flow what I want to cash flow on a rental. And so there's multiple ways to do that. There's some third-party software out there, and I'm not endorsing them, but as an example, PropStream, and you can pull up where people have financed these properties. And what we look for is the financing between 2019 and 2023, because in most cases those interest rates are going to be down in the 3 and 4% range, sometimes lower. I had a gentleman talked to back in July, and he picked one up at 0.8%, less than 1%.
Wow.
And he's never going to refinance that house because he's never going to find that. But so I'm looking for people that are in a position, and if they bought a house, say for instance, you look at it and they bought that house in 2022, they're going to most likely have a very low interest rate, but they don't have enough equity in there to list with a realtor and sell traditionally without bringing money to the table. And they're not necessarily distressed or anything like that. A lot of them are new house communities. So if you go into a tract builder, as an example, a D.R. Horton neighborhood that was bought, where the neighborhood was built in the early 2020. Did I say, I meant, 2019 to 2023.
Yeah.
Just make sure I didn't mess that up. And you're literally marketing to that neighborhood, and I will buy your house even if you don't have equity.
Right.
Personally, I get a lot of mine by word of mouth. I pick up a lot of properties that are owned by other investors. Sometimes they're accidental investors where they've inherited a house,
Right.
or they've got married later in life and both sides of the marriage have a house, and they try to rent one out and it's a disaster for them. Not everybody's lined up to be a good landlord. We see that all the time. So my marketing is, you can either go to an eviction court and you can look and see who the landlords are, and they may be tired of tenants and toilets and just done with this aspect of their life. People that are retiring. So I've got a student that started in December. He's not in Texas, and he got very creative on this. Most were subject twos, but he got a few that he talked to people into owner financing. But he picked up $1.8 million of real estate from the 1st of December through just right before Christmas.
Wow.
Now he closed on them in January for the most part. I think he's got one that's left to close in February. But and he's 20 years old. He's a young guy, and he picked up 11 houses from one individual that was just wanting to get out of the market. And as this young man said, he's old. He just wants to get out before something happens to him. Later in the conversation, I asked him about, how old is this guy? He says, he's got to be in his 50s. And I'm like, that hurt. Like I said, there's tons of people out there wanting to sell. I know back in the subprime days, they did studies, and they were talking about over 90% of all foreclosures never talked to an investor or a realtor about selling a house. They just let the foreclosure happen.
Oh, wow.
And this isn't looking for foreclosures. You're not going to, the aspect of this, you don't want to run in and try to buy a house that has a lot of past due payments due on it, because you're going to have to pick up those payments at the time you close.
Right.
But there's tons of ways. I like word of mouth. I like networking. I like reaching out to people. And it's not saying, hey, Tim, you want to sell your house? It's, hey, Tim, do you know anybody that might want to sell their house? Maybe they don't have a lot of equity or whatever. And we get a lot of people that are in a position, but they're not in a dire position, but they're like, I need to do this before something else happens, or before I just run out of my money.
Right. One other creative financing strategy is seller financing. When does seller financing make sense for both the buyer and the seller?
For me, on the buyer end of it, it's all about cash flow. Whether it's subject to owner financing, buying traditionally through a mortgage company or a bank or hard money lender or any of those, I've got to look and see, what is this going to create for me as buying that. I just have to look at it and say, what can we do creatively to create cash flow? And if it's a investor selling a rental property, I'm going to dig down in there and see what he's actually making. If he's renting it out for $1,500 a month, he's not making $1,500 a month. And that's where a lot of people get hung up on is, oh, I've got to do this and I'm going to owner finance, but he's got to get $1,500 a month. No, he doesn't. He's got a mortgage. He's got property taxes. He's got property insurance. He's got vacancies. He's got, every once in a while, you have to replace the stove, or you have to have the HVAC system worked on or something on that basis. So he may only be cash flowing $150 a month. And if you offer him something in that basis, picking up that mortgage on a subject to, or even, and you're letting him make what he was making, but he doesn't have the stress of the toilets and tenants, then he's most likely going to be very interested in your offer. As far as the seller goes, creative financing, whether it's subject to or owner financing, not seller, but the buyer. I think I messed that up, but if I was buying a property or selling a property to the seller, it's all going to be about their monthly payments. What can they afford, and where can they go with that? So you just got to get creative on it, and you got to make it attractive. You got to look and see, what are they getting out of this? Part of it is the stress. They're getting rid of their stress,
right?
Or they're getting into a house. If I'm owner financing it out, maybe they can't get a traditional mortgage because maybe they don't have the best of credit. Maybe they just moved here from another part of the country and started a new position in a new industry. Maybe they own their own business. I work with a lot of people that own their own business, and they don't really have on their tax returns what they're really making, because the business pays for a lot of their expenses. And they go to the bank, and the bank says, oh, you own your own business, we're not going to give you a mortgage.
Right.
So that's where the owner finance thing comes in, giving people the opportunity to have ownership, to build their equity, to fix their credit. I always use a servicing company that records their payments and records it to the top three, Equifax and TransUnion and all that. So it improves their credit score. When their credit score improves, their car insurance is less, their credit card rates can be less, all that kind of stuff. All these people are looking at risk, and we're providing a great service. So just build those relationships.
Right. That's good. Yes. You've done a lot of deals. You've bought a lot of houses, and mentioned one of the mistakes that you made was selling a property too soon. So I'm curious, do you keep most of your properties as rentals? Do you sell them? How do you sell them?
My business plan, and sometimes it doesn't always work out, but let me just answer this. No, I don't sell them outright. I've done too many of those houses, and I regretted every one I did. I should have owner financed them out. So my business plan is I pick up properties, normally by subject to, and I turn those into a rental property. But when I get the tenant in there, I really work with that tenant saying, I would love to sell you this house one day and I'll owner finance you. And so I like to keep those for at least 2 years. And I'll tell them, hey, let's work this maybe in a couple of years. Here's what you're going to need. Here's what you're going to have for me to owner finance this. So you're going to have a down payment of 10%. You're going to have to make sure your rental payments are on time. I'm not going to sell you a house if you're late on my rent, because I know you're going to be late on the house payments. That's not what it's about. And so what I do is I pick these houses up, I rent them out at least 2 years. Some wind up being a lot longer than that. The tenant just can't seem to save up that 10%, but they do have some type of ownership to that house, and then I will owner finance that to them down the road. Sometimes they move, and I'll restart that with the next tenant. And I may, and depending on the house and depending on how much equity is in there, I may list it in the MLS just to have that out there too. And I will pay the buyer's realtor, but it has to be owner finance. And I've had a lot of realtors argue with me on that. They already have a loan. They want that out. I'm only going to owner finance it out. I don't understand. That's because they don't understand the cash flow that owner finance will bring to the investor.
Let's speak directly to someone listening right now who wants to invest but feels limited by money, credit, or the fear of making mistakes. What are the first steps that they should take today?
They want to get an education. And you can get a mentor. Not all mentors are going to charge you. If you're very sincere and you go to any business person and say, I'll buy you a cup of coffee, I would just want to sit down and talk to you for 20 minutes. Most are going to say, that's great, as long as you're a professional.
Right.
If you're going in there non-professional and you're wearing flip-flops and shorts and no shirt, they're probably not going to want to meet with you because they don't think you're serious. But it's not wearing a suit and tie either. It's just being presentable.
Right.
And listening. Once again, it's not about you. It's about them.
Right.
Every mentor you have, it's about listening to them. And make sure you're getting mentors that have done the work, that have built their lives on a correct basis. Sold a house. My wife sold a house years ago, and the buyer, it was not owner financed. It was just outright. The buyer calls me up in about 2 years and says, hey, this house needs a roof. And I'm like, okay. And she said, I called my insurance company. They won't insure it. And I said, when you bought the house, you had the roof inspected, and you had a roofing company inspect it, and you had your inspector inspect it, and there was nothing wrong with the roof because you had concerns about the roof, and there was no issues with the roof. And I said, why will the insurance company not inspect it? And she says, I had a friend that came over and said I needed a new roof, that my roof was at the end of its life. And I said, well, your roof is 10 years old. It's not the end of the life. And she said, I called the insurance company and told them, my friend told them it was not insurable, so they're canceling my insurance.
Oh, no.
And I'm like, is your friend a roofer? And she says, no, he delivers for Domino's.
Oh, no.
And I'm like, you're getting bad advice, and now it's created a hardship in your life. I don't know what to do. I couldn't fix it anyway, but I fixed it. And you need to understand, you don't need to be telling an insurance company something that you know nothing about. And there's plenty of people that are willing to give all of us very bad advice through life. And we see that all the time.
Right.
And so mentorship is about finding successful people. Tim and I are both Rotarians. Rotary is one of the largest service organizations in the world. And it's most people in Rotary are in management or ownership of businesses or in a leadership role of some type. And that's why I joined Rotary when I was in my 20s. I was able to get advice from people that weren't family, that weren't my suppliers or my customers in my business. I was able to get advice from people that were home builders. I was able to get advice from people that ran other companies. And for 1 hour a week, I was able to sit down, listen to a great presentation, and maybe sit down later or go to lunch or have a coffee or whatever with these very intelligent people that have gained a lot of insight of my life. Tim mentioned earlier that I know everybody, and we have a mutual friend, Dennis, that tells everybody, if you need to know anybody in the world, Roger knows. I'm going to know somebody that knows them. And it's because I'm out there all the time. Tim's the same situation. He's out there. You've been a Rotarian for many years. You're involved in your church, and I tell people to get all the time, get involved in your church or whatever religion. Get involved with other people is what you're doing.
Right.
And learning from them and learning from successful people and not from the guy that's not successful. And I'm not slamming the guy from Domino's, but he wasn't. He would have been great on telling you how to find an address, and I would have listened to him on that and probably get his bedside on that. But he's not a roofer, and he should not be giving that advice, and people do that all the time. I had a gal in my business, in my export business, and she was having some issues with her marriage with her husband. And I watched her, and she was going to this gal, she's on her 7th marriage. This guy's on his 4th marriage. This guy's in the process of getting a 2nd divorce. And she's getting advice from those people. And then she came to me, and I wasn't married yet. And she asked me for marital advice. And I said, I've never been married. I can't give you advice on that. That'd be stupid. And you're going to these people and getting advice? I said, you go to church, right? And she says, yes. And I said, talk to your pastor and their wife. How long have they been married? Probably 50 years. Okay. Perfect people to go talk to. Because marriage is not all unicorns and rainbows. We have our challenges in marriage because it's people. And we're polar opposites. Men are from Mars and women are from Venus. And so get advice from people out there, but get an education. If you can't afford mentoring, you look and see what can you do to get around that, to make that happen, to surround yourself with the most knowledgeable people, and then you listen and you take action.
Great. Thank you for that, Roger. This has been very valuable. If somebody is wanting to learn more about your work, connect with you, or continue their education, maybe they want to pick up your book, how do they get a hold of you?
Yeah, I have a website out there. It's subject2institute.com with the number 2 in there, subject2institute.com. I also have subject2book.com. Either one of those, you can buy your book directly from me. I'll pay for the shipping. I'll ship it directly to you. It's $19.95. Also have some information in there on picking up documents. If you need documents for your real estate, create a real estate business, I have a portal in there that you can pick up your documents. Or I have over 100 videos that are short videos that will walk you all the way through the whole process of Subject 2, from marketing to before the sale and after the sale, all the way through it. How to deal with title companies, whatever else it may be, which comes with the documents. And then I have all that with one-on-one mentoring for 1 year. I'll mentor that individual on every creative deal, Subject 2 deal they do in a year. And I'll work with you on how to talk to the sellers. I'll work with you on what documents you need, how to find the right title companies, how to find the right insurance companies you're working with, or work with the existing insurance companies. So all that is available on my websites and subject2institute.com. Very happy, very proud of that because it's brand new. We just revamped it 2 days ago. I've got a whole new look to it. Very happy with it. Very simple the way it works. And on my one-on-one mentoring, it is not a set call. We're not going to talk at 10 o'clock on Tuesday morning. It is you call me when you need help. If I'm tied up with another client or I'm tied up working on a deal or whatever, I will call you back. But I will get you answers to that. And in most cases, I'll tell them, yeah, here's a short answer to that. But for more information, go to my website, go to the lessons, go to lesson number 4. The 5th one down will walk you through that in a more extensive basis. And it's not expensive at all. It's 10% of what most other companies are out there doing. So once again, is get that education. Tim and I would not be in our positions today if we did not find a way to get educated.
Right.
And listen. But this is a fun business. Tim and Lynn and Jean, my wife, and I, and Tim and his wife, Gabi, we've been on several cruises and several vacations together with other investors. It's a great way to connect. We have a lot of fun, and we go to a lot of events. I learn a lot from Tim. I've always learned a lot from Tim, and I hope I've given some information back to him too. So over the years, but you just want to connect. You want to get with the right people. You want to get the right information, and understand this is a business. You got to work it as a business. And then we close out with this on a Subject 2. Those sellers are not going to come to you because they don't know you exist. They don't know this whole process. You've got to go to them and offer a solution to their problem.
Right.
And once you offer that solution, they may say, yeah, I'll do that right now. Or they may call you back in 2 years and saying, you still doing that real estate thing? And I sure am. What can I help you with? My house has been vacant for 2 years. I've been paying $2,500 a month for 2 years, which is $50,000, and I can't sell it. I've had 4 different realtors listed, and it's just not selling.
Yeah.
Can you help me out?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right, that's great. This has all been very valuable. And to everyone listening, just please remember that lack of options keeps you stuck, and the education you invest in creates leverage.
Absolutely. Tim, thank you so much for allowing me to talk today. I like to talk. And Tim, we started this out, Tim. We don't want to make this a 9-hour broadcast, okay? So,
no, 9 hours would be a little bit long. No.
Right.
Thanks for sharing your time, Roger. I really appreciate it. And the heart you have for helping people. And if this episode has helped you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. And we'll see you next time on the Falls Home Front. Appreciate you tuning in. Want more insider tips on buying, selling, and investing in Wichita Falls and North Texas? Subscribe now and keep watching. Your next move starts here.